In the heart of Colorado, nestled against the backdrop of the Rocky Mountains, lies the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, commonly known as ADX Florence. This prison, often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, is designed to incarcerate the most dangerous criminals in the U.S. federal prison system. Established in 1994, ADX Florence serves as the nation's only federal supermax prison, embodying the epitome of high-security incarceration. The inception of ADX Florence was driven by a pressing need to contain inmates who posed significant threats within the prison system. Prior to its construction, incidents like the 1983 murders of correctional officers at USP Marion underscored the necessity for a facility that could effectively manage the most violent offenders. Norman Carlson, then director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, advocated for a prison that would isolate such inmates, thereby enhancing the safety of both staff and other prisoners. Architecturally, ADX Florence is a fortress of reinforced concrete, designed to minimize human contact and prevent escape. Each cell measures approximately 7 by 12 feet and is equipped with a bed, desk, and stool, all made from poured concrete. A single slit-like window allows minimal natural light angle to prevent inmates from determining their exact location within the facility. These design elements ensure that prisoners remain isolated, both physically and psychologically, from the outside world. Inmates at ADX Florence spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. During their 1 hour of allotted exercise, they are escorted to a small, enclosed area often referred to as a dog run, where they can move about but remain isolated. This regimen is intended to prevent communication between inmates, thereby reducing the potential for coordinated disruptions or escape plans. The prison's population comprises individuals deemed too dangerous or high-profile for other facilities. Notable inmates have included Ted Kaczynski, the infamous Unabomber, Ramzi Youssef, mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and Zacarias Moussaoui, linked to the 9/11 attacks. These individuals are kept under stringent security measures to prevent any possibility of further harm. Security protocols at ADX Florence are unparalleled. The facility employs motion detection sensors, surveillance cameras, and remote-controlled steel doors to monitor and control inmate movements. Correctional officers undergo specialized training to handle the unique challenges presented by the supermax environment, ensuring that security breaches are virtually non-existent. Despite its high security measures, ADX Florence has faced criticism over the years. Human rights organizations argue that the prolonged solitary confinement and sensory deprivation can lead to severe psychological effects, including depression, anxiety, and hallucinations. These concerns have sparked debates about the ethical implications of such extreme isolation. Legal challenges have also arisen, with some inmates filing lawsuits alleging that their conditions of confinement constitute cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment. While courts have occasionally acknowledged these concerns, the overarching need for security has often upheld the prison's practices. The operational philosophy of ADX Florence is rooted in the concept of administrative segregation. This approach aims to isolate inmates who pose a continuous threat, not as a form of punishment but as a preventive measure to maintain order and safety within the prison system. Inmates are evaluated periodically to determine if they can be transferred to less restrictive environments. One of the most infamous units within ADX Florence is Bombers Row, which has housed several high-profile terrorists. This designation underscores the prison's role in containing individuals whose actions have had profound impacts on national and global security. Communication with the outside world is severely restricted. Inmates have limited access to phone calls and are prohibited from having physical contact with visitors. Mail is meticulously screened to prevent any potential security breaches, ensuring that inmates cannot orchestrate criminal activities from within the facility. The psychological toll of confinement at ADX Florence is profound. Many inmates experience a condition known as SHU syndrome, characterized by symptoms such as hallucinations, panic attacks, and memory problems. These effects highlight the intense mental strain associated with prolonged isolation. Critics argue that the conditions at ADX Florence may exacerbate mental health issues rather than rehabilitate inmates. The lack of social interaction and environmental stimulation can lead to a deterioration of mental well-being, raising ethical questions about the use of solitary confinement as a long-term solution. Despite these criticisms, proponents assert that ADX Florence is a necessary component of the federal prison system. They argue that certain individuals pose such significant risks that extreme measures are required to ensure the safety of others both within and outside the prison walls. The prison's location in the remote town of Florence, Colorado, was strategically chosen to enhance security. The surrounding rugged terrain and distance from major urban centers make escape attempts highly improbable, further reinforcing the facility's impenetrability. Staff at ADX Florence undergo rigorous training to manage the unique challenges of the Supermax environment. This includes techniques for de-escalating potential conflicts, understanding the psychological effects of isolation, and maintaining strict adherence to security protocols. Over the years, there have been instances of inmates attempting to challenge their confinement conditions through hunger strikes and legal action. These efforts have brought attention to the broader debate about human rights and the ethics of solitary confinement. In response to growing concerns, the Federal Bureau of Prisons has implemented measures to address mental health issues within ADX Florence. This includes increased mental health evaluations and the development of step-down programs aimed at gradually reintegrating inmates into less restrictive environments. The step-down programs at ADX Florence operate in multiple phases, each allowing inmates slightly more privileges and interaction as they demonstrate good behavior. These programs aim to transition prisoners from complete isolation to a more traditional prison environment while ensuring they no longer pose a security risk. However, not all inmates are eligible, as some are considered permanently too dangerous to be reintegrated. One of the major challenges in running ADX Florence is balancing security with mental health concerns. Many inmates have pre-existing psychological conditions that can worsen under extreme isolation. The prison administration faces scrutiny for how it manages these inmates, as long-term solitary confinement can lead to irreversible cognitive and emotional damage. Despite these concerns, ADX Florence remains a crucial facility for housing prisoners who have proven too violent or dangerous for other maximum security prisons. Unlike traditional penitentiaries, where inmates can interact with each other in yards and communal areas, ADX Florence keeps its population strictly separated to prevent any possibility of violence or escape planning. Prison escapes in the United States have a long history, but no inmate has ever successfully escaped from ADX Florence. The facility was built with multiple layers of security, including motion sensors, armed guards, and electronically controlled doors, making an escape virtually impossible. Even if an inmate were to breach the prison walls, the desolate landscape surrounding the facility would make survival and recapture almost certain. ADX Florence is not just about housing terrorists and serial killers, it also holds notorious gang leaders whose influence extends beyond prison walls. Inmates linked to powerful organizations like the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican Mafia, and other organized crime groups are kept in ADX Florence to prevent them from continuing their criminal enterprises. One such example is Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the infamous Mexican drug lord and leader of the Sinaloa cartel. After multiple high-profile escapes from prisons in Mexico, U.S. authorities ensured he would never break free again by placing him in ADX Florence. His confinement is heavily monitored with virtually no contact with other inmates. The concept of supermax prisons like ADX Florence has been debated among legal experts and human rights organizations. While they serve the purpose of neutralizing extremely dangerous individuals, critics argue that they fail to offer any form of rehabilitation. For many inmates, a life sentence in ADX Florence is equivalent to being buried alive, with little hope of redemption. Despite these criticisms, proponents of supermax prisons argue that facilities like ADX Florence play an essential role in maintaining the safety of the broader prison system. Without such extreme security measures, violent inmates could continue orchestrating crimes from behind bars, endangering both prison staff and society at large. Life inside ADX Florence is strictly regimented. Every inmate's daily routine is dictated down to the minute, leaving no room for deviations that could lead to disorder. Meals are delivered directly to cells through slots in the doors, preventing any chance of physical contact between inmates and staff. Education and recreation opportunities at ADX Florence are severely limited. While some inmates are allowed access to books and television, their choices are restricted. Certain educational programs are offered via closed-circuit television, but inmates can only participate under strict supervision. Due to the harsh conditions, some inmates at ADX Florence have attempted to take their own lives. Suicide watch protocols exist, but in an environment where inmates are often left alone for 23 hours a day, mental health deteriorates quickly. Some prisoners have been known to harm themselves out of sheer desperation. The step-down programs at ADX Florence operate in multiple phases, each allowing inmates slightly more privileges and interaction as they demonstrate good behavior. These programs aim to transition prisoners from complete isolation to a more traditional prison environment while ensuring they no longer pose a security risk. However, not all inmates are eligible, as some are considered permanently too dangerous to be reintegrated. One of the major challenges in running ADX Florence is balancing security with mental health concerns. Many inmates have pre-existing psychological conditions that can worsen under extreme isolation. The prison administration faces scrutiny for how it manages these inmates, as long-term solitary confinement can lead to irreversible cognitive and emotional damage. Despite these concerns, ADX Florence remains a crucial facility for housing prisoners who have proven too violent or dangerous for other maximum security prisons. Unlike traditional penitentiaries, where inmates can interact with each other in yards and communal areas, ADX Florence keeps its population strictly separated to prevent any possibility of violence or escape planning. Prison escapes in the United States have a long history, but no inmate has ever successfully escaped from ADX Florence. The facility was built with multiple layers of